Hi everyone, Kevin Kramer here, and welcome back to video 3 of the series. I want to thank everyone for all of the great feedback we've been getting from these. I think once you realize that things really aren't that difficult and all the mysteries taken away, that the walls really start to come down and really you can see what you can actually achieve. So to get you up to speed, if you haven't already been able to watch the last 2 videos, in the first video I revealed to you how I use the grid system to get perfect proportions in my images every single time, and how size can really make an impact on the amount of detail and how your images are really perceived. Now, I also gave you some space-saving tips for how to set up your studio in really tight quarters. And in video 2, we broke down shading into 4 simple steps that you can use over and over again that will get you the most impact from your efforts. And I also gave you 3 ways to really make your art your own and how to avoid the pitfalls of just like copying like a human photocopier when you're actually using the gridding method. In this video, we're actually going to go even deeper into the strategy of what it really takes to master realistic drawing and shading. Like artists Chuck Close, Alphonse Mucha, Edward Hopper, Winslow Homer, even Rembrandt, and all of the other masters, you of course have to master your skills and your tools, but you also must develop your visual eye and the way you look at the world. Now the question is, how do you do these and have a way to think through your images? You probably heard of people saying to start off with rough lines, box it in, and get more detailed as you go. And I would agree with that, and that process is actually called blocking in the image. It's easy to say, but what do you do to block in the image? Where do you start? There's a simple way to help you do this. Every image you ever create can be broken down into 3 shapes. That's all it takes. Cartoonists break all of their characters down into these. Digital artists use software that breaks these down. They're based on polygons, and the whole system's based on those. And the shapes are just in everything we do. Even the traditional artists use them. So if you look at any object around you, it can be broken down roughly into these 3 shapes. 1, the sphere or circles. 2, cubes or squares. And 3, cones or triangles. Now if you take a look around the room right now, you'll see a ton of these examples in action. The computer screen, the cup of water next to your desk, the table, your pencils, everything is made up of these. Everything in our environment can be broken down into these 3 shapes. And the better you get at mastering the simplification of objects into these 3 shapes, the better your proportions will get and the more skillful you'll be at drawing the correct lines at the right places at the right time. Taking a 3D world and recreating it on a 2D surface is one of the toughest things to do. If you don't break your images down into those shapes, it's really going to be a struggle. So take a look at this image of a dog. How would you break it down? It looks pretty complicated on the surface, but it really isn't once you break it down into the different shapes I just said. You can first break down the main body of the dog, then the smaller features like the snout and the eyes, and then finally the hat. And you can see how they kind of make up that image. They all made up of circles and squares and triangles. You can draw them in more precise detail and make them 3D, but in essence, that dog is captured in those shapes. And once that is done, you can fill in all the detail. And you put a grid on top of that, and then the shapes get even easier to draw out. But that's the secret with art. Like I said in the last video, all art is built on rules and principles. And the better you get at mastering them and training yourself to think through your subjects, the better your work will get. The difference between a good drawing and a mediocre drawing is really just the different ways of approaching your images. As with most things, the best way to get better is to practice. A good way to do that is to carry a sketchbook with you. When you just draw everything and break down everything around you into those shapes. Just go sit in a park or a coffee shop for a few hours and just observe everything you can. You can draw your hand, piece of paper, it doesn't really matter. All that does matter is that you really start to develop your sense of space and observation. Just look and take in everything in the environment. And the key secret to being a great artist is observation. The better you get at observing the things around you and the way you interact, the more attuned you'll actually be. Really observe the intersection of lines, contrasts, of shapes, and light, and take it all in and draw what you see. You don't need to memorize how everything looks in order to draw it. That's a really big mistake most people do. You must learn to observe and draw what you actually see, not just draw what I refer to as icons of the objects. There are things we learned to draw when we were little that stick with us, and most people never get out of that stage of drawing. They just keep drawing those same iconic images of what it should look like. They never really look at the object they're drawing. They just draw the icon and they already have in their heads. And this goes for adding shading to your drawings too. If you just draw fake lighting, you'll see it. It will show. And if you actually study how lighting works and draw what you see, the images will have a lot more realism and impact. And we'll be teaching that in more depth in this big Shading Masters course pretty soon. The more that you can connect your hand and eye together, the more control you'll have over whatever you're doing. If you can just do that. One exercise you can do is to actually take a chair or a glass and simply draw it without ever looking at the paper. Don't ever look down. This will give you a really good sense of how far you need to go in order to really start to match up those two. You might find that it's almost like learning to ride a bike for the first time. The more you do this, the more comfortable you'll get and the more comfortable you'll feel with the pencil, and you'll also look down a lot less as you draw. The more you draw, the more you get better. So you learn to master the observational skills and be more present, and your drawings will improve dramatically. And if your drawings are not where you want them to be right now, you're probably either not effectively observing or you haven't developed the processes to help you get that done. And again, we'll be teaching that in the big Shading Masters course. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cover the top 10 questions or concerns that really hold most people back and that I get a lot with their shading and their drawing. And over the years I've heard a lot of these over and over from developing artists through emails, comments, and from just helping other people draw. So here they are. Here are the 10. One is, I can't get perspective and proportions right. Well, I hope through this video you've gotten a pretty good understanding of how you can get perfect proportions every single time using the grids, so that you don't have to worry about starting your images. You can just get down to business and get your drawing done. The grid system definitely is my way to go whenever I start any image. Projectors work when you're in a super kind of time crunch, but you have to worry about getting skewed images, and you still have to have a printout of the image to draw. So as far as perspective, you can use a grid to help you plot out all of that. 2, my shading doesn't look real. The top reason shading doesn't look real is because of the fact that you're either creating the shading without taking into account the lighting source, which a lot of people do, or you just don't have a solid understanding of how light works. And that's mostly why you're not putting in the right shading and the lighting. So if you really study lighting and how it works, your images will show that. You can't fake nature. That's where all observational skills come in. We go into a lot more depth of how to draw light effectively in the big Shading Masters course too. One of the third things I get is even shading. To me, this is one of the easier things to get done. One of the easiest ways to get really good shading is to just take a paper towel and rub it onto some graphite and then just blend it into the paper. This gives you a soft blended tone, and you can actually make it as dark or as light as you want, and it's a lot more forgiving. Depending on how much graphite you add to the paper towel, it doesn't really matter how much you do. It's going to really allow you to put things softly down, and you can erase them pretty easily. And it's cheap. You use a paper towel. Number 4 is which parts to start with. This varies from the type of drawing, but the best rule of thumb is if you're right-handed, start in the top left corner and work your way down diagonally, downward. And if you're left-handed, obviously start in the top right corner and then go down the other way. And the benefits of that are that you'll work down your image and you won't be resting your hand on the parts of the drawing that you've already worked. And that just, avoids a different smudging and all these other things. And it's a really great way to work, and I do it when I use the grid, but even going back and reworking some areas is is often pretty necessary. And another great way to avoid smudging in those cases is to just put a piece of paper, a blank piece of copy paper, on the top of the area you're working on, so that way you can rest your hand on the paper and not actually on the drawing and get it smudged and track it all over the image. And once you find that, because once you find that, it's horrible. Number 5 is going to be, which tools do you use and when? This comes a lot when people are first starting out. What tools do I really need? And I would argue that you really only need a pencil and paper. That's really all you need. And everything else is just fancy tools. You can still achieve really great realistic drawings without any of the other tools, just using line. Line is the basis for everything, including great shading. All you need to draw is a line with a pencil. Doesn't matter if it's a 2B, 6B, charcoal, or whatever. They all work for drawing. 6 is, I'm not talented or born artist. This one gets me every time. This is really just a matter of confidence. There's a thing I recently learned called confidence loop. That means the more skillful we get at something, the more our fears shrink and confidence grows. And the more your confidence grows, the more willing you are to try new things and develop your skills. And that cycle just keeps going on and feeding itself. And that's how you really go forward. Granted, some people might have a little more natural tendencies, but even they can only go so far on that alone. The more you practice and learn from others, the more your skills will develop, and the more your confidence will just skyrocket. It'll just grow. And remember, any natural talent will always be overcome by consistency and hard work. So don't be discouraged. There are plenty of people in the world with natural talents that are way more than mine that will never fully develop them. Number 7 is, I'm not creative. One of the things about creativity is it takes work. And if you just sit around and wait for some creativity to strike, it rarely does. And the older I get, the more I realize that the process is key. I keep journals and sketchbooks full of project ideas and little snippets from here or there that pop into my head as I come across them, and they're basically all just in a holding place for them. And whenever I have a slump or I need an idea, or the first place I look is those journals. Sometimes I find that one of those ideas is the missing piece to the thing I'm actually working on. It might just spark that one thing that I was struggling with. Number 8 is, I can't capture my ideas down effectively. The best way is to approach this and take that idea in your head and draw the rough sketch down the best you can. That way you at least get the idea out of your head, so you don't forget it. And I do that with all my journals. That's the same process. Once you have them down, you can develop them and grow them as your skills develop. You might not, you just might not be where you are at the moment to take it out. And of course, taking pictures of things can help you visualize what you're trying to draw as well. Having a photo reference is key to really drawing, fantastic, realistic images. Truth is, you might not even be at the skill level, like I said, to pull off the ideas that are floating around in your head. You might not have it fully realized either. So if you let it sit and kind of just gestate a little bit, you'll start to see what else is missing or what can be taken away. And the best advice I can give is just be patient. Number 9 is, I don't have the money. Well, a lot of people think that art is super expensive. And if you look at it, it really isn't true. When you get an oil painting and acrylics, the price can actually go up, but you get to those points and you have to get to some of the basic knowledge of drawing before you can do that. And the tools to do that are super cheap, and there are tons of sites around and online that have free quality content of the basics and your tools. And you can learn tips and strategies from anyone over time as you come by them. Whether you choose to join me in the bigger Shading Masters course or learn from someone else, I personally do think that it is easier to learn from someone who is where you want to be, because it allows you to leapfrog, all the unnecessary things and get there a lot faster. And 10 is, how do I do really good shading? That is what the course is about. That's where the Shading Masters comes in. It's a comprehensive program that teaches you the tools and the techniques of how to think through your drawings in a way that makes them have more vibrance and allows you to get more realistic results. It's a laser focuses down what you absolutely need to give your attention to and what you don't. It helps cut through the slew of products and the techniques and just gives you the step-by-step process to create amazing drawings super quickly. It's taking all of my years of trial and error, from learning about paper to how to draw textures and capturing lighting and Shade Like a Pro, and puts it all in one location for you to access online. And I'll give you a quick run through of what's included in the course. I'm going to teach you all of the tools you need. I'm going to give you all of the step-by-step instruction of how to get specific textures and effects. I'm going to teach you how to think through your drawings, teach you all the strategies, all the techniques for drawing realistic images and shading. I'm going to give you templates to practice on that you can print, a supplies list that you can take to your art store and make sure you get everything you need, worksheets to help you work out your compositions, and everything you need to get started in drawing realistic pictures. First, we start off with the tools and supplies and how to choose the best ones that are right for you. And how do you choose the right paper for the job? What should you take into account? And what drawing tools and pencils do you really need to spend your hard-earned money on? We even cover how do you set up your studio or area, and how do you get the most effective use from it. Next, we'll jump into and really give you a new way to think through your images. How do you express form effectively in your drawings? How do you really capture the lighting and effects realistically? And what are the different parts of light that you need to know to draw effectively? If you don't know the parts of light, how can you draw it effectively? What are the things that you're stuck on that you probably don't even need to even worry about with your shading? This section is the cornerstone of all your drawing and all of the planning of your images. It'll really take them to that next level. And then next, we'll go in depth into what builds up all of your drawings, what techniques and tools to use effectively to capture the realism, and which techniques do you use to, for specific aspects of your drawing, from drawing hair and skin to more rough textured surfaces and, smooth gradiated tones. And, we show you how to manipulate each technique to get the most maximum results for all of your efforts. Then we're going to teach you specifically how to capture different textures. The specific ones. How do you draw bricks and concrete? How do you draw clothing, glass, skin, water, and a lot more? And we break down each of them and give you a step-by-step approach to how to effectively draw each and every one of them. And then finally, you'll learn from case studies of all of my large pieces, from the Big Alex piece that won me the awards, and all of my other images from my artist friends' drawing projects, and all the ones I'm working on, and I'll update them as I get them more completed. And they break down the processes and unique challenges for each of the drawings and give you insights into the approach and strategy behind each of them. I hope you can see I've really broken it down into the core elements of what it really takes to draw realistically and shade like a pro. I worked hard on this course, and I really tried to create the course that I wish I had when I first got started. I know how much of a struggle it can be to figure all of this out and just kind of go through the books, and it can take years to find all the strategies and techniques to get the results that you're looking for. I know how hard it is to read through the books. I know how frustrating it is to read through the books and look at those static images that take huge leaps from step 1 to step 2, and it's so frustrating. And there's some great books out there, but video can really take your understanding to an entire new level. And actually being able to follow someone step by step is a whole lot easier than try to figure out those little nuances that were left out in the books from 1 to step 10. I hope that these videos have really served you. I hope you are excited to get started as I am and really take your work to the next level. I'll be opening up the course very soon, and I look forward to you signing up, and I hope you really enjoyed this mini course. And again, post any comments or questions below this video so we can get started answering any of the questions you might have, and I really look forward to announcing Shading Masters very soon. Until then, remember to always, always keep it simple.